The thing- Okay, I am starting to sound a bit like these Disney adults, but with Nintendo instead. I am 28 years old. I still enjoy the Disney movie on occasion. Not a lot of the recent ones, but I still fondly look back on the ones that I did enjoy in the past and rewatch them on occasion. Recently, I've also rewatched the How to Train Your Dragon, the original movies. Different studio, but same idea. Animated movies, primarily targeted at children. I'm not going to act like they aren't. But I, a 28-year-old man, still enjoyed them. I still broke down crying when spoiler happened in How to Train Your Dragon 2. I'm not going to say anything more about that, even though it is a 13-year-old movie, no, 11-year-old movie now. And this brings me to today's article from The Independent titled, "Do You Hate Disney Adults or Are You Just Jealous?" by Holly Baxter. And then you can see a literal group of Disney adults, definitely older millennials. Looks like this guy couldn't afford his own pair of Mickey Mouse ears. You know, I just remembered I've still got an R2D2 pair that I bought when I went in 2013. Look, I can have a little fun, but before we figure out the truth about Disney adults, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe for daily videos, and comment what you think about Disney adults. If you are one yourself, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. And I want to be clear on something. When I'm talking about Disney adults, I'm talking about the ones who take it too far. If you're an adult and you enjoy Disney, you enjoy Disney movies, Disney shows, you happen to have some nostalgia, you happen to enjoy going to the parks, I completely respect that. My problem is when you take it too far. That's what we call a Disney adult. Not an adult who happens to enjoy Disney things, as would describe me. Anyway, let's get into the article. You've seen them. The grown women in sequin ears, full body sobbing at the sight of Goofy. The couple who honeymooned in Anaheim and return for their castles and cocktails anniversary every year. They own themed Loungefly backpacks, refer to the Haunted Mansion as their spiritual home, and line up for limited edition popcorn buckets. They have preferred princesses. They watch Ride Perspective YouTube videos published by influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers. They mouth the words to the pre-shows. Hey, nothing wrong with watching ride perspective videos on YouTube. It's probably a cheaper way to get an idea of what it would be like compared to actually going to the parks. Now, I'm actually kind of surprised Disney doesn't copyright strike these videos for whatever reason. And there's nothing wrong with having a preferred princess. I think Tiana's pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. Princess and the Frog is a great movie. But here's where they go too far. Full body sobbing at the sight of Goofy. Castles and cocktails. I don't know what that refers to, but I can tell you right now. Walt Disney himself would not be happy with that because he did not want alcohol served in the park. I'm guessing they probably go drinking at Disneyland. And the fight videos that you can just find on YouTube kind of explained why Walt was completely against the idea of having alcohol in the parks. But unfortunately, the shareholders were like, you have to make us money. And then Disney was like, oh, we're gonna make you that money. Screw you, Walt. We're gonna sell liquor at the parks. You think you know them because you've heard about the worst ones. The ones who shoulder barge toddlers out of the way to get to Mickey Mouse. The ones who weep theatrically outside Cinderella Castle. The ones who yell into ring lights and selfie sticks about the latest cupcake at Gaston's Tavern. And the ones who whisper, rope drop to fireworks, like it's a sacred mantra. In mainstream discourse, they're derided as infantilized and obsessive, an off-putting cult of adults in arrested development. I'm sure most of them are just having their fun. You know, it's okay to have that kind of fun for a day or two, or a week, or for some other period of time, as long as you're otherwise a functional adult. If sports fans are the acceptable face of adult fandom, Disney adults are its punchline. 37-year-old Ann Chester knows all this. She's a magic key holder who plans her outfits before each trip. She coordinated her pregnancy announcement in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle with a custom Beauty and the Bump shirt. Her husband proposed to her at Disneyland just before midnight, after a ride on Peter Pan. She took her daughter Lily for the first time at 8 months old. She won't remember it, but I will. And she has gone back many times since. Sometimes with her family, sometimes just with friends, sometimes for a late night Star Wars themed special event with her husband. By most cultural measures, she fits the stereotype. I do find that people can be a bit negative about it, she says when I ask her about the online conversation surrounding Disney adults. She doesn't know why people get so riled up about people who love the Disney brand. Maybe they don't like amusement parks. Maybe they don't like fun. I don't know. I do think it's a little strange that someone would think so negatively of something because they don't enjoy it. Well, the Matt Walshes of the world are like, this shows a cultural infantilization of today's adults. Disney World and Disneyland are places for children to enjoy. Adults who go to Disney theme parks for fun are just weird. Again, me, personally, I have nothing against it. You're an adult. What you do with your time and money is your choice, and I respect your choice, even though I don't personally agree with it because, yeah, I enjoy Disney movies and shows, but I've never been much of a theme park guy, so I wouldn't. So I don't care much for the theme parks. It's the movies and TV that I usually engage with, and I enjoy, you know. I will praise the good. I will diss the garbage. But I do explore other things. One could actually call me a Nintendo adult because I really enjoy Nintendo video games. I am one of the people who stayed up till well after midnight Eastern time to pre-order a Nintendo Switch 2. I waited anxiously for 2 days from launch day and the day after launch day for my pre-ordered Switch 2 to arrive. I bought Pringles and Coke just to pretend that I got the free ones like Walmart did. Hey, Pringles were on sale at Star Market at the time. It was my last day to be able to get them for that price. So yeah, you could call me a Nintendo adult. And yes, you could also argue I'm not really a functional adult outside of that because I'm 28 years old, living with my parents. But this is about Disney adults, not Nintendo adults, and this is about, what was her name again? This is about Anne and other Disney adults, not me. And here's the picture of her and her husband with the Beauty and the Bump photo. He's wearing a Hakuna Matata shirt. And they have the Disney font onesie for the impending baby. All right, back to the article. The past few years have seen an explosion of Disney influencers, some of whom have well over 1 million followers, and an explosion of commentary surrounding them. A professor of religion has written about how Disney adults now fit the bill. They have uniforms, the ears, t-shirts, and princess dresses. Take pilgrimage. I'm, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get through that with a straight face. I mean, John Oliver did confirm that a lot of those the check boxes from the IRS for what constitutes a religious organization can often be checked off by accident. Like when he made the Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. Okay, let's try and get through this with a straight face. Take pilgrimages to every park from Disneyland Paris to Tokyo's Disney Sea. Partake in rituals surrounding pivotal life moments. Proposals at the castle, multi-generational vacations, and even family trips to scatter the ashes of their loved ones. An increasingly common, but definitely banned practice that keeps getting rides temporarily shut down and have a shared language. It's cast members, not Disney employees. And they deliver pixie dust rather than excellent customer service. Actually reminds me when I went to the Disney store in 2018. I remember the cashier said, "Have a magical day" after the end of the transaction. It was interesting to note because it was a Disney store. Yeah, this is a Disney store thousands of miles away from any theme park. Literally just one of many stores at a greater Boston area mall. And as the community of Disney adults grows larger and larger, the backlash does too. And unfortunately, makes it harder for other adults to just enjoy Disney movies and shows without being considered weird for enjoying it. Hey, Inside Out 2 was a great movie last year. Elio, this year's Pixar movie, I'm not hearing such great things about it. but whatever. I wouldn't watch it until it was available at home anyway. Not because I would feel weird going to see a Disney Pixar movie in the theater. It's because of the risk of disruptive children in the audience, which could also happen at How to Train Your Dragon. It could be happening at that upcoming Smurfs movie. It could have happened at Lilo and Stitch. Well, I wouldn't go to see that one because of how creatively bankrupt the whole live action remake endeavor is. The particularly vocal hostility to Disney adults is striking, says Lynn Zubernis, a licensed clinical psychologist and professor at Westchester University who specializes in fandoms. They have clinical psychologists specializing in fandoms now. This is not satire. This is not the Babylon Bee I am reading. In comparison, there's very, very little criticism both in the UK, in Europe in general, and in the US of people becoming passionate fans of sports teams, despite the fact that following football or basketball or baseball with a passion is completely analogous to any other kind of fandom, including Disney fandom. They get the same benefits, they do the same things, they are equally passionate and intense. But this is a more socially accepted type of fandom. So they also make fan pilgrimages. It's just going to it's just going to the meet that their favorite team is at, and people can go all over the world following a team that they like. I once had a relative admit to me that they would like to get an RV and follow their favorite football team to every single game of theirs someday. They might bristle at the term, but sports fans also engage in cosplay to show their fanish identity, Zubernis adds. In the world of sports, that looks like wearing your favorite team's jersey instead of dressing up like Snow White. At the heart of it, however, these actions are all motivated by exactly the same psychological impulses, but one is very socially accepted worldwide and the other is often ridiculed. I mean, I'm pretty sure Martin Goldberg, formerly known as Economic Invincibility, he said the same thing about it, it being ridiculous. The sports worship thing, because of the obese guy raging about the physically fit 22-year-old not doing as well as he should have in his NFL game. Yeah, I remember he said something about that and how you could actually spend that time to get into good shape. I mean, that's not a bad idea. But hey, like I always say, you're an adult. You do with your time and your money is your choice, and I respect your decision, even if I don't quite agree with it. It's unclear exactly why this is, but Zubernus has a couple of theories. For one, Disney tends to be more beloved by women, meaning that misogyny might play into it. However, Zubernus adds, almost all fandoms are criticized by wider society for openly enjoying something that is a distraction from work and family. A common refrain is, why don't you grow up and be more serious? It just so happens that Disney adults make an even more convenient target for that criticism because most Disney films were originally created for children. Well, that is their primary target demographic, though. The live action remakes, if Tim pulls on to anything about the declining birth rate being a factor, those are primarily targeted at the Disney adults because there are not enough children to market it to make a profit on, even if you are selling both the child's ticket and the adult's ticket. Well, it's not always a 1-to-1 ratio. Consider this a family with 3 children, assuming both parents go, that is not a 1-to-1 ratio. If you start doing group screenings where, let's say, one of the adults takes a group of, let's say, 5 or 6 children to see a movie, that is not a 1-to-1 ratio. But with the whole birth rate decline, at this point, I think Disney's trying to market to the Disney adults a little too hard. And again, operational definition here is the ones who take it too far, not the ones who enjoy Disney movies. All right. Continuing with the article, we are generally, as human beings, are uncomfortable with people expressing very strong passion for something, Zubernus adds. There's something about that display of emotional reactivity and not regulated emotions that makes us anxious and uncomfortable when we see it in other people. So when fans are really passionate about something, especially something that makes you uneasy in the first place, that doesn't seem quite appropriate. I thought it was the other way around. I thought, according to all the red pill dating advice I'd seen, women like when a man is very interested in something, bruh. Find something interesting to do to be able to talk about, bruh. Alright, getting back to the article. We are, in other words, evolutionarily hardwired to get the ick from people being too openly enthusiastic because we tend to feel like when people's emotions get out of control, that maybe they are going to be out of control, and that might, in some way, be dangerous. Zubernus brings up one example of how the public collectively experienced that repulsion to overenthusiasm. The moment when Tom Cruise leapt up on Oprah's couch and started jumping up and down with excitement. He was a movie star and he was a guy, but even he didn't get a pass for showing that much strong emotion, she says. People are very anxious and uncomfortable about that. Protection from a cruel world. When Anne Chester goes to Disneyland, she experiences something that's rare for a lot of women. She feels completely safe. I have never felt unsafe in Disneyland, she says. I feel comfortable just going with my daughter and I into the parks. And there's always someone around if you need anything. The Disney parks are well-oiled machines with thousands of cast members, both including both uniformed guards and plainclothes security throughout, working to make sure that rowdiness is tamped down, bad actors are swiftly ejected, and visitors are protected from crime and inconvenience. If you want a good example of how exactly they work, it might be a little dated now, but the Itchy and Scratchy Land episode of The Simpsons, demonstrates it perfectly. It was so good to demonstrating this, and it was also for some other thing about satire, I think, that my 10th grade English teacher actually showed us that episode in class. True story. I mean, they bill it as the happiest place on earth, says Zubernus. It literally has a tagline that sets it apart from the rest of the world. And you are protected. There is a higher level of security. Everybody who works there is very well trained. Zubernus personally knows a number of former cast members, and she knows they take it very seriously, and that Disney, as an organization, makes sure the norms that are set there are very different to the outside world. Cleaners and custodians have extra training on how to make Mickey heads out of water with their mops for passing guests. Hotel pool lifeguards are given extended training and are regularly subject to random tests where managers will slip child shaped mats into the water during busy times and time how long they take to react. I mean, I knew all about the two finger point, some kind of waving motion they use, and the underground tunnels and such that they use, but that's new to me. I mean, the lifeguard thing, probably a good idea regardless. The Mickey Mouse ears with the mop, bit of overkill, but I can imagine a 5-year-old would be impressed by seeing a janitor create Mickey Mouse ears out of the water pattern. Chester also knows that when she walks into the park, she's walking into a space where like minded fans will appreciate her efforts. She will always dress Disney at Disney, either in the Star Wars Spirit jersey she got during a May the 4th drop, or in something themed around her favorite princess, Sleeping Beauty. Some fans will go so far as to dress according to the rides they plan to go on. Jester says she doesn't do that as much, but if I know I'm going to be in California Adventure all day, I might do some kind of Avengers outfit or something. Enjoying that combination of perceived safety and camaraderie is common among fandoms, says Zubernus. From message boards to Comic Con, spaces of fan gathering feel this way because they tend to have different norms for interaction. Oh, and there's the picture of her fiance proposing to her in front of Sleeping Beauty's castle at midnight on Christmas, right after they had gone on the Peter Pan ride. Kind of a grainy photo. Wow. Can you believe that 2013 was 12 years ago now and phone cameras were still not that good? Well, this could have been a. That was probably a phone camera. Nowhere is this more obvious than the r/Walt Disney World subreddit, which is replete with defensive responses to people who have insulted or judged Disney adults. Spaces half enthusiastic grown ups planning their 100th pilgrimage to the land of mouse, half harried parents looking for tips on how to navigate the complicated Disney infrastructure during their once in a lifetime trip, and those two groups don't always play nice. I'm 30, and I went to Disney World last October, one recent contributor wrote. And the one thing I really wanted to do was to meet the princesses. People would say to me, "Why do you want to do that?" Or, That's for kids. Or, you know they're just actors in costumes. Guess what? I don't care. I didn't get to meet the princesses as a kid. And so what if I want to meet the characters? Yes, I know that they are actors in costumes, but still, it was an awesome experience. And when I go back, I will do it again. I'll admit, I am guilty of this too. When I was 20 years old, the Franklin Park Zoo held a Star Wars Day where the local 501st Legion cosplayers came out in costume, and I got a selfie with Captain Rex. I'm not gonna lie, it was really cool. Yes, I was 20 years old. I knew that was just some guy who was wearing the Captain Rex armor, but I got a picture with Captain Rex. You know what? It's fun to do that every now and then. I guess as long as you don't take it too far, like some of the pervy dads I've heard might get a reposition their hand a little inappropriately with the princess actor because they know she can't really do much. Unfortunately, there are some pervs out there who will do that. Sorry, I brought down the mood a little with that, but it had to be said that it happens. I heard about it from Clownfish TV. Replies to such posts are almost universally supportive. There are the people who visit the parks in order to heal their inner child. I have spent my entire adult life now traveling twice a year to my happy place. The cost of Disney is less than therapy, and I rarely think about my childhood anymore. And people whose lives are a struggle outside Disney, where they find a temporary reprieve from hardship. My favorite thing I ever spotted was in Animal Kingdom by the Harambe Market. They named did they name that after Harambe? Oh my god, it's been over 9 years now since Harambe was taken from us. Ugh. There's graffiti on an old decaying concrete pillar that says, "Broken hearts healed here," and it stopped me in my tracks. That, to me, the 33-year-old man standing in the dusk of a fake African marketplace staring at that graffiti, is Disney World to me. I had a moment. There are former cast members who worked as the princesses and meet and greets. We love every face, 0 to 100 years old. Hand on heart, we do not judge anyone coming in line to meet and hug. Teenagers and middle aged women, there are people who grew up in poverty. I was trapped in poverty in rural Arkansas until well into adulthood, one commenter said, adding, "We need what little escapism we can find." I can get behind that, you know? I played some Pokemon Let's Go Eevee on my Switch 2. I'm playing it in handheld mode because it's the closest I can get to the original button layout. And I'm playing it now on my Switch 2 while my Joy-Cons aren't drifting because that game will not let me use a Pro Controller. But I will admit, yesterday when I was playing it, sitting up in bed rather than on my Yogibo Max, it was a nice little escapism, I'm not gonna lie. But unfortunately, I can't do that all day, every day. You know what? I have no problem with people going escaping into Disney World for a bit as long as they come back to reality and they remain otherwise functional adults. There's a 40-year-old single straight man who travels solo to Disney World, Florida every year and tries to be respectful while indulging his love of meeting characters. The costume characters, I have no problem, but the face character princesses, it can be tricky because I'm sure they get their fair share of creeps, and I don't want to be that guy that gives the actor the ick, he says. So I try to follow a few important rules. Never initiate physical contact if they go in for a hug or take my arm. That's fine though. And I always try to bring at least two questions to ask them that they could answer in character without having to make awkward small talk. Hey, this guy's speaking my language. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm very hesitant to initiate physical contact with other people in general. If I were to go on a big group Disney trip for whatever reason, like I said in my video about the guy tallying the cost of Disney World, like one day, I would probably ask them questions to test their dedication to the character. Like I might ask Tiana about her restaurant just to see what her answers are. But I digress. God, I really want to watch Princess and the Frog now because of this. And then inevitably, there are the haters. Disney adults were the worst part of taking my 5-year-old last week, came one reply to that post about princesses. The response to that claim became heated, with some complaining about parents and strollers and bad attitudes, and others agreeing. I'm trying to make this an amazing experience for my kids, and the line is 2 times as long because of way too many adults trying to get a picture with someone in a costume. Did Matt Walsh write that? Well, he wouldn't go to Disney World because of the whole back and forth between the Disney Corporation and the state of Florida with the Don't Say Gay bill. But I digress. I think it's perfectly okay for adults to enjoy this every now and then. The problem is when they aren't respectful of the fact that there are other people around them, when they're literally acting like children themselves, where I think they cross a line. When I say children, I mean children under 8 because the age of 8 is when empathy is developed. And so basically from the ages of 8 onward, that's when you should know better. I saw that in a video from one of the child-free YouTubers. Her complaint was she didn't want to have to wait 8 years just for a hypothetical child to learn empathy, which is fair. That's her right if she doesn't want to. As I always say, if someone doesn't want to have kids, they should not be forced into it. That is a detrimental situation for both parties involved. Really, nobody wins in that situation. Not enough to go around. The problem with loving the Disney parks is that so much of what makes the experience great is a finite resource. Lines stretch beyond 2 hours at times, Lightning lanes are costly, with a top tier premier pass sometimes costing $400 per person per day, on top of the costs of the tickets and food and transportation just to skip the queues in one park at Disney World. Characters can only meet and greet a certain amount of people. All of this creates obvious conflict between parents with small children and adults who are engaging in nostalgic joy. If they have the space, I honestly think it might not be a bad idea to just have a designated areas for. No, no, they aren't going to be able to do that. I was going to say that they should have designated meet and greets for children, designated ones for adults, but then what if a kid goes by one that's meant for adults? That could probably get really awkward really fast. It would get kind of annoying for the parents. Yeah, I think they're just gonna have to learn to coexist. Look, unless Disney starts prohibiting adults who are not supervising children, unless Disney prohibits Disney adults, which would be detrimental to their income, unless Disney either focuses on serving families over childless couples and groups of adults or individual adults, they're all going to have to learn to coexist. The families, the Disney adults, and childless adults who just want to enjoy a little nostalgia, you know? You're all going to have to learn to coexist, or none of you should be going to the parks. See, this is why I'm glad I'm more of a Nintendo adult, and all I really do is when a new console comes out, I pre order it for within the first, sometime within launch day or the day after, in my case with my Switch 2 experience. I am so glad that's about the most of it. And occasionally getting a game on day one. I'll admit, I don't really buy video games on day one anymore because I cannot trust that they will be functional by then. Or I can't trust that they will actually be playable. Nintendo, I trust a little more so for the time being. We'll see. That's an interesting sort of tension that doesn't happen in very many fandoms. That really is kind of unique to fandoms like Disney or My Little Pony or Barney. Things that were targeted at children that now adults sometimes continue to like, says Zubernus. It's tempting to tell adults in this space that they should simply move out of the way and let kids have their turn. But it's important to remember that when Disney adults are engaging in nostalgia, they're also solidifying their identity. And humans are neurologically set up to seek these moments. When we indulge in what they call nostalgic reflection, which people would be doing when they're indulging in their Disney fandom, you actually mentally transport yourself into the past. You kind of leave the present. You access all that autobiographical memory. It feels really good. It actually lights up the reward centers of the brain when we're engaging in nostalgia. It brings all kinds of psychological benefits, including that feeling of belongingness and more optimism, more life satisfaction. There's even research that after people engage in nostalgic reflection, they have higher levels of empathy for other people. So it instinctively connects us to our own past and brings a feeling of connection to other people. So it helps us feel more authentic, more like we're aligned with our true selves, because there's that sense of continuity between your past self and your present self. Fun fact, nostalgia used to be a mental disorder, according to a writing teacher I had in sophomore year of college. I'd argue we're right to not call it that today on account of the fact we have a better understanding of why we do this and how it affects the brain. Because, yeah, on the surface, it can seem a little insane. If you've read The Great Gatsby, there's a whole thing where Tobey Maguire's character is like, "You can't relive the past, Gatsby." And then Gatsby's like, "Yes, you can, old sport." Perhaps you went to Disney as a child and it was your happy place. Perhaps you simply dreamed about going, and that's what kept you positive while you were living through trauma. Perhaps, like Ann Chester, you got engaged at Disneyland and imagined bringing your own children to the scene, then spent a long time trying to get pregnant, with a lot of emotional ups and downs along the way. Why then wouldn't you announce your baby with a Disney onesie and a picture in front of a fairy tale palace? What exactly is the problem if you do? You know what? I agree. What is the problem with that? If you can see any legitimate problem other than they're acting a little immature or something like that, you let me know in the comments down below. But as far as I'm concerned, Ann Chester has every right to express her Disney fandom the way she does, as long as she's not shoving kids out of the way to do a character meet and greet or something like that. As long as she at least shows the same level of empathy an 8-year-old is capable of showing, then I see no problem. When Disney adult turns against Disney adult, oh boy. It's not all rainbows and pixie dust in the Disney adult community, however. Sometimes the fandom can be vicious. AJ Wolf is the founder of Disney Food Blog, a phenomenally successful brand that was started as a couple's project with her husband in 2009 and now employs 50 full-time staff. DFB, as it's now more commonly known since it's long branched out from just reviewing food and puts out video and written content about everything from vacation planning to ride rumors these days, has people in the parks on every single day of the year. Its readership leans Disney adult, so much so that Wolf wrote a book, Disney Adults, exploring and falling in love with a magical subculture, out in August this year, about the much maligned community. While interviewing Disney adults for the book, she found out something strange. I've actually watched some Disney food blog. I remember something about you can actually order DoorDash to your hotel room and stuff like that. You can cut costs on food that way. I don't know, it's been a while. I mostly listened out of curiosity, and this is when I was into looking for POV videos for the rides. Anyway, getting back to the article. When I would talk to Disney adults and I'd say, Do you find that you get a lot of pushback online or from your family or from people at work that they're just like, why do you like Disney so much? Why are you going to Disney again? Their answer consistently was, yeah, a little bit. But actually, the worst part about being a Disney adult is other Disney adults. Wow, it's like a Disney adult civil war here. And to paraphrase Chris Rock in Bring the Pain, and the Disney adults who go too far have got to go. Wolf hadn't seen that one coming. I was shocked, she says. She asked people to expand on what they meant, and their reasoning was mostly because there has become this very significant hierarchy within the Disney adult community. I compare it to a church community, honestly. She laughs and clarifies that she means that in the negative sense. People are trying to one up each other. They're trying to get higher, and the higher you are, the more you can look down on everybody else. So, do you have an annual pass? Have you been on this brand new ride? Have you gone to this brand new park? You know, what are your wins in the space? And I think that a lot of Disney adults are just tired of that. Tired of being looked down on by other Disney adults or being thought to be less than, or even trying to fight that battle of, well, if I don't get this new Loungefly, then I'm not going to fit in with my Disney adult group. Or people aren't going to give me those envious looks, you know? Every group has them. I mean, really, you could apply this to Nintendo adults too, whether it's those talking about how they couldn't get the Switch 2. So, like those who couldn't get the Switch 2 might feel a little left out. I mean, I know I felt a little left out when I had to wait an extra day for mine to arrive. But hey, it arrived eventually, and I passed the time by getting my own Pringles and Coke so I could pretend Walmart gave them to me. Okay, I am starting to sound a bit like these Disney adults, but with Nintendo instead. The only difference being, I do not have to go to such insane lengths or spend that much money, relatively speaking. Yes, I spent $500 plus tax on the Mario Kart World Bundle, but between the library of games I already had for Switch 1 that are playable on that, and the amount of entertainment I'll get out of Mario Kart World, I don't have to spend much more money in the long term. Back to the article. That brutally competitive side of Disneydom happens among the influencers too, Wolf says. She's been subject to it herself. People will say, oh, Disney invited me to their media event. Well, Disney didn't invite me to their media event, and it's, oh, my word, it's just a lot. And I think that kind of infighting has started to get to people. In some ways, Wolf adds, she was upset to hear people telling her that the Disney adult fandom isn't quite as kind and supportive with one another as it claims to be. After all, isn't this supposed to be the happiest place on earth? While she was listening to interviewees wax lyrical about how awful Disney adults can be to each other, I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really prove my theory for this book, so I need you to not say that. But all right, she says. I heard it over and over and over. This happens in every single fandom, says Zubernus. I've watched it, and again, this just goes back to human psychology. It was an evolutionary imperative back in the day to belong to a group. So if you didn't belong to a group, you were literally going to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. So we are evolutionarily wired to prioritize belongingness and to form ourselves into groups. Once a large fandom, like the Disney adult subculture, becomes too big, it naturally begins to fracture into in-groups and out-groups. There are always going to be subgroups that define themselves as, we are the ones doing fandom right. This is who should be shipped together in a TV show. Or this is the most important character. Or this is how you should cosplay. Whatever it is. Each little subgroup is going to define themselves as an in-group. And in-groups develop their cohesion by pathologizing outgroups. So sometimes those outgroups are other subgroups in the same fandom, and the accusation is often, well, they're doing it wrong, or they're not good fans, or we are the good fans and they're the bad fans. Even Ann Chester hits her limit with some Disney adults. After the Disney parks briefly shut down during the early days of the COVID pandemic in 2020, she was among the first to attend the reopening. People were still socially distanced, with many in masks, but the reappearance of the characters was a big moment for a lot of people in line. These Disney adults were crying when they saw Mickey. Crying, like hysterically sobbing. And I was just really embarrassed, she says. It's just, it's a person in a costume, and they're aware of that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to side with Anne here. Okay, just kidding. I actually cried tears of joy when I was able to buy movie theater popcorn again in 2020 after the movie theater had been closed for almost 6 months, and then they weren't allowed to sell food until at least another month after they had initially opened. I am far from perfect on this. I know, I'm just like, I am no better than those Disney adults who were crying at the sight of that. Okay, I wasn't crying hysterically at the theater thing, but I'll admit my eyes did water up because, hey, I'd been deprived of the movie theater popcorn for so long. Now, I actually know how to make my own popcorn almost to the same standard as the movie theater popcorn, which is why I have no problem aborting plans to see a movie if online critic I trust confirms it to be hot garbage. Anyway, let's keep going with the article. The politics of envy. It was 2020 when Disney adults really came to the forefront of the cultural conversation, says AJ Wolf. Although the concept had been there, and the name had been used sparingly prior to that, it's really 2020 when everything came out, when everybody was stuck at home, online, and angry. Wolf has noticed in her interviews that the perception of Disney adults is that they're mainly childless millennials, the kind who have also been castigated for supposedly spending their down payment money on avocado toast and for lacking the grit of their parents. In reality, of course, she adds, it's the economy and generational issues that have worked against millennials, creating global housing crises and employment recessions with cycles of layoffs. But Disney feels like an easy thing to point to. See, look at those lazy, good for nothing wannabe kids. They should be procreating. Instead, they're lining up for an autograph from a cartoon dog. Yeah, it does. It does not look good, but again, if you enjoy it, I personally have no problem against you enjoying that if that is something you like to do. You're an adult, and what you do with your time and money is your business, and I respect your decision. Even if I have to side with Anne like I did earlier. In a politically divisive and geographically unstable environment, Disney adults may simply represent a bunch of people trying to find joy where it is no longer abundant. They're also sometimes seeking predictability, Wolf says, who adds that it's important to note that there's a sizable community of neurodivergent Disney adults, particularly those who identify as autistic. For those people, they may state that when they travel to Disney, I know what to expect, so it's not something that I have to go into blind. I know what it's going to be. I've done it before. If your psychological load is higher, if you have a very stressful life working multiple jobs, or if you're autistic and spend all day masking, that will be particularly important. For example, Wolf says, I was taking my 82-year-old mom to Florence for the first time, and there's a lot of research, and there's a lot of information you have to learn, and you're going into a completely different culture. You're going into a completely different transportation space, and money space, and food space, and you have to learn this mini culture to go there. And if you've been to Disney before, you've already done that work. So you'll keep going back because, well, I know what to expect. But also, there's so much there that I have a lot more that I can do. I haven't done all of it, so there's so much more, but I've already done the legwork. For members of the LGBT community, particularly in Florida, that's particularly pertinent. Disney World is safe for them, and they know they can go there and be safe and comfortable. And they don't have to worry about someone maybe physically attacking them or accusing them or whatever, Wolf adds. So a lot of people will go because it's just like, I just want to relax. I don't want to think. And you also know it's going to be relatively clean. Wolf's own self described addiction to Disney started when she lived in New York City, she says. And that's because it's the opposite of New York City. It's predictable, it's safe, it's clean. I know everywhere that I go, there is probably going to have relatively decent food and not a lot of roaches. So, yes, I think that's a huge piece of why they keep going back. Such repeat visitors might be easily stereotyped as unadventurous or babyish, but perhaps critics should consider that those people might simply have hard lives and might save up their money every year to visit Disney because it provides such a big psychological payoff. That just made me realize I feel the same way about the Museum of Science up in Boston. It's something I enjoyed doing when I was younger. And even though the exhibits change out over time, they don't have the Star Wars ships and the Blue Wing anymore. They used to have a Naboo starfighter from the Phantom Menace and something else hanging up in there. But when I went there in 2019, which was the first time after the first time since 2015, which I guess they still had it. And that's 2019 is the first time I remember it, seeing, noticing it wasn't there. Because 2015, when I went to the Science Behind Pixar, was the first time that I went there after Disney had bought Star Wars. Yeah, I think my last time I had been there before. or then was 2009. But yeah, I really enjoyed when I went in 2024. I really enjoyed the Theater of Electricity. I enjoy. I asked the guy there after the fact check about Lightning being involved in Venom 3. Kind of a dumb question, I know, but hey, I wanted to test this guy's expertise and fact check a movie while I was at it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with enjoying something like that. And I didn't like try forcing my way to the front row seats to enjoy the Theater of Electricity show. I stepped back, I watched from a distance, I let the kids who were on the field trip there enjoy their experience. The point is, unlike some Disney adults, I was able to let other people enjoy the experience without ruining it for someone else. I still got my nostalgia fix from things like that, and the T Rex model and the Triceratops skeletons, while also enjoying the newer exhibits that were based on newer science because, believe it or not, science changes, science advances. Anyway, getting back to the article, I think this is the same baby from earlier. Yeah, that's Anne's baby from the baby bump photo earlier. We should remember, says Lynn Zubernus, that being part of a fandom isn't inherently pathological. In fact, 9 out 10 times out of 10, it's a force for good. Fandom brings all kinds of psychological benefits, higher self esteem, and more optimism and more positive emotions in that sense of belonging, she says. There will always be people who take it too far, who drain their accounts to visit the parks too often, or who neglect their real family relationships in order to feed their addiction. But those people are rare, she adds. And because Disney is so successful at marketing, and being a Disney influencer is so uniquely lucrative, we should be prepared for the Disney adult community to only get bigger in the future. When we find something that gives us that sense of well being, we instinctively want more, 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 more of it, she adds. Hey, I feel the same way about with video games. Like, I'll admit, earlier today I was playing some more Let's Go Eevee and I was trying to give myself the nostalgic feeling of summer of 2016 when I was playing blue version on my 3DS with the TV in the background playing something else. Because the monotony of some training tasks in Pokemon games. I know I said I was going to get away from multitasking like that in another video, but I was just experimenting. Okay, let's finish this article. I think that one of the things that people hate about Disney adults is that they think it's weird and they don't understand why they like something for kids. That doesn't make any sense to them, says AJ Wolf. But there's another component to the Disney adult hate that she thinks people haven't considered. I think there is a bit of jealousy there. A lot of people have been drawn in by the demand to be relentlessly serious, to always involve themselves in conflict, and to lose themselves in divisive discourse online. The existence of the high-octane, technicolor Disney adult challenges, everything they thought they had to leave behind. What does it mean if they don't actually have to sacrifice that fun and whimsy at all? How should they feel about the people who didn't? Wolf smiles and shrugs her shoulders. The jealousy is definitely subconscious, she says, but in her opinion, it's definitely there. There's a little bit of, how come these people are all out to have fun and I am not? So you're saying Matt Walsh is just jealous of these Disney adults and he's secretly thinking, huh, why can't I go to Disney World and enjoy character meet and greets and all the other stuff and walk around in the hot sun and such? I mean, I bet that's probably similar to. I bet there's probably a similar mindset around Nintendo adults such as myself. I bet the boomers and the Gen Xers who would poke fun at me for continuing to play Nintendo games, they're probably just jealous. Alright, on that note, I think I'm going to leave it here for the video. I went on way longer about this than I expected, but I really wanted to talk about this because, yeah, there are double standards for sports fans who go around in their sports jerseys and such, like the middle-aged obese people who are raging about the follies of a 22-year-old on the NFL team. You've also got people who will say things like playing video games is immature. At the end of the day, as long as you are something of a functional adult, which I would define as someone over the age of 18 who is capable of making sound, responsible decisions, such as doing these kinds of hobbies in spare time instead of making it their entire life or destroying their everything about their lives to fuel something like that. So you know what? I'm just going to leave it here for the video. Comment what you think about all this. Give this video a like. Subscribe for daily videos. And I will see you soon.